Week 2 in the NFL kicks off tomorrow night. New York Football Giants taking on the Washington Football Team. And yesterday we told you about some trends in the NFL throughout Week 1, including a 12-4 record for underdogs. Today we'll tell you a little bit more as we flip the page and look ahead to Week 2 on this Wednesday. And the Saints' last opponent, the Green Bay Packers, Musso, are 6-0 against the spread since 2019 following a straight-up loss. And the Packers this week opened up against Detroit, as 10.5-point favorites. It's now up to 11 or 11.5 points, depending on where we look. So let's see if Musso wants to ride the Dan Campbell train again after getting so close last week. Teddy Bridgewater for the Denver Broncos is 35-13 against the spread as a starter in the NFL. Obviously, a couple of those with the New Orleans Saints. He is 13-7 against the spread as a favorite and 4-1 against the spread as a road favorite. I really like that 6-point line, I think, between Denver and the Jacksonville Jaguars this week. Y'all know how I feel about Urban Meyer in his first year in the NFL. We'll talk about that we'll talk about Urban a little bit more later on in the segment. And lastly, the Cleveland Browns are laying 12.5 points against Tyrod Taylor and the Texans. We talked about some of those big spreads in the NFL this week yesterday, Musso, but the Browns have been a double-digit favorite just 3 times since 2000. But they are 2-1 in that spot, and Tyrod Taylor has covered his last 6 starts, including the playoffs for the Texans, as we were talking about before. So I feel kind of really good about some of these matchups here. Does any of this stand out to you?
So Cleveland and Houston is the one I'm really looking at, because to have 3 spreads like that in the NFL, that's a lot of points. To answer your question about Green Bay, I'm staying far away from Green Bay. Because people are just hammering that line. It's already moved, like you said. It's up to 11.5, depending on where you look. 6-0, that's enough to kind of scare me off. Aaron Rodgers is now having to sit here and listen all week, chirp about how he spent all this time in the offseason doing whatever he was doing, going on vacation, hosting Jeopardy, hanging out with his fiance, getting engaged, doing all that kind of stuff, and fighting with his GM and whatnot. And now they come out and lay an egg, and that's chirping. He's going to go out and make a statement. You look at, Teddy Bridgewater, nothing but success. Wish for Teddy 2 gloves. Love what he did when he was here in New Orleans. Appreciate that guy. Tampa Bay, they're another big spread. I think the Falcons are terrible. Look, I cashed a ticket on the Falcons last week. They're awful. I'm not about to pick them to cover, but I'm also not necessarily feeling just laying out 12.5 points, and that could possibly get up to 13 or 14. Cleveland's the one that intrigues me, because of a couple of different reasons. Number one, they're coming off of a hard-fought game against the Chiefs where, let's be honest, they kind of blew it.
Yeah.
That was a tough loss to swallow.
They're right there.
But what you have to pay attention to with Cleveland all year is how they handle expectation now. There's many people who think they can win that division. I think they can win that division. You think that they can win that division. People are betting on them to win. You remarked to me earlier, Mario, that it's funny to see Cleveland so high on Super Bowl odds right now.
Yeah.
And it is. So how do they deal with those expectations? Tyrod Taylor's record against the spread. Look, they just slapped the Jaguars around last week. I know it was the Jaguars, but the Texans were the underdog in that game, if I do recall. They were a 3-point underdog. That game intrigues me a little bit because it's so many points and everything else that we just laid out.
It intrigues me as well. And somebody in the YouTube chat, Josh, is asking about Urban Meyer and the rumors about him possibly going to USC. And we'll get to that in a moment. But that does bring me to my fantasy football thought of the day, which today, Musso, is just another episode of Urban Meyer doing something dumb. As you know, and as we just mentioned, his Jaguars lost to the Texans 37-21 in his first game as an NFL head coach. And in that game, Musso, James Robinson, a 1,000-yard back from last year, and the running back 7 in fantasy football in 2020 only had 5 rushing attempts for 25 yards. 30-year-old Carlos Hyde, who's been in the league forever, had 9 rushing attempts for 44 yards. And I know the Jaguars were playing from behind in this one, but please tell me how that makes any sense. Did he not watch any of James Robinson's games last year? It reminded me a little bit of a couple years ago when Carlos Hyde was taking touches away from Nick Chubb, and that made absolutely no sense. And that brings me to this Adam Schefter tweet. I don't know if you've seen it, but he was quoting Urban Meyer talking about not wanting to go to USC. And Urban Meyer was saying, I'm the head coach of the Jaguars. I want to be here. I have no interest in doing anything else. And so many people in the comments tagged at Freezing Cold Takes that Freezing Cold Takes commented and almost ratioed Schefter saying, thank you, everybody, for all the tags. So I don't think he's going to succeed in the NFL at all. I don't know if he'd be interested in going to USC specifically. I could definitely see a world where he goes back to college, but everything would kind of have to align really well. I mean, that's what happened when he got the opportunity at Ohio State. So I don't know if USC at this moment in time would interest him in leaving the NFL. But what I do know is that team is going to be a disaster this year.
Yeah, they're not going to be very good. I know we've talked a lot about their win total and whoever the hell put it at 6, what were they on? But yeah, that's not going to happen. They're not going to win 6 games.
No, not at all. Let's talk a little bit of New Orleans Saints while we had the time in this segment. Talking to Mincy coming up in about 5 minutes. The New Orleans Saints, since the start of the 2018 season, are 18-6 against the spread on the road. They're still 3.5-point favorites this Sunday at the Carolina Panthers. And diving into the numbers a little bit deeper, New Orleans is 16-6 against the spread as a road favorite since the start of the 2016 season. And updating what we talked about yesterday with the coaches getting COVID for the Saints, one player was added to the COVID-19 list, but it was Michael Thomas who wasn't playing anyway. So a little bit redundant there. But talking about the Saints, Musso, we've mostly recapped the Packers game up until this point. But as we turn the page on this Wednesday, early thoughts on the Panthers?
I think they had a really nice offensive game. I know maybe they struggled a little bit in the red zone, but Sam Darnold had a really good debut, man. 257 through the air, I misquoted that. It was over 270 actually through the air for Sam Darnold, and it included a 58-yarder. To Robbie Anderson, who former teammate with the Jets, and he had a rushing touchdown as well. Christian McCaffrey did Christian McCaffrey things, 197 total yards. So that guy's back. That's after all the injuries he's had. He's fine. Doesn't have any lasting effects from him, obviously, which that kind of sucks. So the Saints defense better come prepared. I mean, do what you did last week and you'll have some success, but you're on the road, and Carolina Saints have won 4 straight over the Panthers right now, but it is a rivalry. It's a division game. Those are always normally fairly close, except for the final game last year when they played the Panthers, when I think the Panthers had like a high school guy playing quarterback or something like that. It wasn't very good for them. They threw it 5 interceptions. Early thoughts are, I think Carolina is improved from last year, even on defense. I think they added a couple good pieces. I know they were really young last year. Remember Matt Rule's first draft at Carolina? He drafted nothing but defensive players. So they are improved. I remember when we did win totals in the offseason, I really kind of liked the over on Carolina. I believe it was 7.5, and I kind of liked the over. So I'm sticking there. I think they're improved, and they could cover that 3.5.
We'll see. They had some good moments last week. I still kind of have doubts about their coaching, and they were still weak in the red zone. I believe they were either 1 for 3 or 1 for 4 yesterday, but they definitely did play well, or Darnold play well last week, as you mentioned. This is going to be a big test for the Carolina Panthers. You're at home. You're coming off a win. You're taking on the 4-time division NFC South division champion in the New Orleans Saints, and they're going to present a much bigger test than the New York Jets. That being said, the health of Marshawn Lattimore is going to be really important with everything they have at wide receiver. And J.C. Horn for the Panthers, remember the Saints tried to trade up to get the first-round cornerback. He will face a stiff test in this one. So we'll talk a little bit more Saints and Panthers as we go throughout the week. But right now, New Orleans still a 3.5-point favorite this Sunday in Carolina.